Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for August 23rd. And guys, holy shit, what a literal crap ton of VR news today. It's just pouring in. And we're going to get right into it. Just a quick preamble that actually ties into the first story, and it has to do with virtual reality peripherals, something we talk about a lot on this channel because it's so important, it's so critical to the immersion and experience aspect of virtual reality. So I was giving it some thought, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think. And what I mean by thought is which peripherals are most important to me, right? And if I had, and put yourself in this same exercise, imagine having access to the dream team. Money is no object, right? You've got the biggest ideal man or woman cave space, and you want this dream team to soup up, and you can use any of the existing, whether it's Vive or Rift or whatever. So Rift with multiple cameras, blah, 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 blah. Which peripherals would you work on? Now, me personally, I would start with hands. For me, hands would be the single most important, other than the HMD and tracking, aspect of virtual reality. Feeling objects, touching, resistance, cold, heat, sensations, all of that kind of stuff I think would take precedence for me personally. Second would be ears, audio. I think audio is the noticeable glaring component in VR that's behind all the others, right? You can make an argument for locomotion too, absolutely. But yeah, it would be audio after hands. And then probably the wireless. Or wireless would be right up there probably with audio, like some kind of wireless ability. I guess you might not be able to call that a peripheral, right? Maybe if it was some kind of base station peripheral that allowed you to transmit wirelessly. Sure, then that would be there. And then last would be legs. Because, look, a lot of locomotion systems are really focused on the primary objective of your legs in any game, right? The exception would be something like FIFA, maybe a game where you're doing sports and jumping, but your feet are generally going to be tracking objects, not, kicking, striking, unless it's fighting or, like I said, soccer, that type of thing. You're going to be using your hands primarily. So that's why I rate the legs least in my view anyways. Curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know. And like I said, that ties into this first story. There is a company called Dexta, and they've got a haptic feedback glove. And this thing it looks freaking amazing. Like, in short, it looks absolutely amazing. Very futuristic. And at first, I was kind of worried about the weight, but we'll get into that. I've got the link below. There's an awesome video showing this in action. But what freaked me out the most was one of the viewers in this channel, XLordB, I mentioned him a few times. He and I were talking about controllers, and he was describing kind of his dream haptic feedback controller. And I kid you not, in my opinion, just reading his text, it basically mirrors this thing, which is pretty damn scary. So that's awesome. And yeah, I can't wait to see these guys launch. But they're doing exactly what I talked about in the preamble. They're able to create resistance. They're able to create the sensation of holding an object, right? I don't know if the individual fingers can bend, but they do have some kind of piston device connecting each finger. So I don't know what the full extent of it is, but I'm definitely going to dig deeper because this is a peripheral that I would definitely want. It's the most impressive of the haptic feedback gloves that I've talked about, in my opinion, right? Your results may vary, but to me, the ability to hold and interact with my hands will be huge, right? Room scale or no, it would be huge. Now, this thing weighs under 200 grams. I think it was 172 or 176. Essentially, it weighs about as much as an iPhone 6 Plus, right? This is my old iPhone 6 Plus. That doesn't weigh a lot. If I'm having this on my hand, no problem. I'd have no problem with that. Even for extended periods of time, I don't think it would be an issue. They are also going to be including an SDK for this thing. and they're calling the technology instant force feedback, right? So, and you know what? There's going to be 1,001 catchphrases, buzzwords, labels, and God knows IT does not have enough acronyms. We're going to get dozens more. Mark my words. Thanks to VR, which is itself an acronym. Oh, Jesus, right? See, it just keeps going like that, on and on. So close eye on these gloves. And last thing I want to say about them, 4-hour charge time. So kind of in that Vive controller range. Jury's still out on the exact time that the touch controllers will last for. But when I find out, I'll let you know. Next article was a piece about the New York Times acquiring virtual reality companies. And I wasn't even aware of that's something that they were doing. Because traditionally with virtual reality, you've seen the old guard, kind of the old companies, not show so much interest. And that even applied to game devs, right? With some exceptions, obviously. But in the traditional publication media, not too many people were running up to the forefront. But in a move, or in several moves that I got to applaud New York Times for, they have been doing exactly that, investing in virtual reality. They've created a virtual reality app, which they say will better be able to communicate stories that they publish, right? And they've purchased a company that does or did VR media and now will under one of their marketing brands. So all kinds of potential that you can see the New York Times setting themselves up for, which I think is awesome. I think there's a lot of room for that type of convergence, right? Traditional publishing media with, hell, video. There's just so much opportunity. We've talked about so much already. We don't need to really dig into that. Suffice it to say, cool move from New York Times. And, as long as they don't give me, this crazy ass subscription model, it doesn't seem to be that way so far. Their app is free. They got to make money. That's not what I'm saying. It's just do the making money smarter, right? With the times, as opposed to the old kind of model, right? If you know what I mean. So that was cool to see. Now, PlayStation VR Worlds is a bundle of 5 experiences. And I'm going to say experiences because that also to me encompasses, it could be a game, right? But it doesn't have to be a game. You say game, it pretty much has to be a game. So let's call them VR experiences. And there's 5 of them. And I'm going to talk about a couple of them. Well, let's just name them all. So there's London Heist, Ocean Desert, Scavenger's Odyssey, VR Luge, and Danger Ball, right? Now, the idea behind this is similar to the Wii bundled games, right? The stuff that we got with our Vives and our Rifts, that kind of starter bundle of things that you can do. But what I like about what Sony is doing is they're taking that one step further. They're realizing that, hey, this bundle is our best marketing tool. And they get it. They understand that. Look, whoever buys this PSVR from us and owns this bundle, right? They are going to let other people try it. And we've beaten it to death, the saying that, look, until somebody tries VR, they just don't get it, in caps, lots of exclamation marks. But it's the truth. They don't, right? And I still maintain I have yet to see somebody walk away as skeptical as they were before they put that HMD on their head. So I think that's a good point. And I think that that nails it. It is going to be a marketing tool, right? Now, they've added onto that concept. So it's one thing to say it's a marketing tool, but what are you doing to ensure that it's going to be the best marketing tool it can be? And that's some of the changes that they announced today in this article, which, as usual, I will link below. But they're basically adding stuff like leaderboards to make the experiences more competitive, right? So, you've got somebody in your family who loves the Olympics, right? Or they're very sporty. They don't get VR. Well, you know what? Maybe a little luge competition, right? It's that kind of stuff. It's that kind of creative thinking. It sounds so basic and logical, but if you're not doing it, there's something wrong because it is so simple and basic. So I think Sony's really grasping. And hey, they, again, I've said this before with Oculus and the Touch, they've got the benefit of time, right? They've seen their competitors launch. They can see the negatives and ensure that those are positives on their side of the ledger for their launch. So really cool. I think that's great. And so yeah, so leaderboards, the other one that I want to talk about is like a casual mode, right? Turn what is a fighting game or a shooting experience into more of an interactive story by allowing that casual mode. Maybe you've got somebody in your family who loves reading, loves interactive, or, movie. The concept of interactive fiction might really appeal to them. So all kinds of potential. Props to Sony. I think that's fantastic. Now, a couple of game things to talk about. Call of Duty Infinite War. It's a VR experience. It was recently shown at Gamescom. Looks to be pretty good. We don't know how long it is yet, any of that kind of stuff. But as we get closer to launch, hey, look, to me, right now, the PSVR lineup looks really appealing. Because while I've got fantastic stuff on the Vive and Rift, I've been using that thing nonstop every day. I'm waiting for the larger, longer titles to launch, as a lot of you, right? By no means am I bored with it, but holy hell am I craving full game experiences. And hopefully this will be one. Hopefully a lot of the launch ones that Sony has will be exactly that. And I'll get my wish. So we will find out. I will report more as I know, but that's Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, it's called. And, and in typical fashion, they said it's a one-off. And anytime I hear a game company or a movie, whatever, say it's a one-off, to me, that's just fancy marketing speak, right? For if this thing sells well, then we'll decide on sequels. That's what it boils down to, right? I'm sure James Cameron's intent with Avatar was it's a one-off. In fact, I could probably find clips where he's talked about that. Then it becomes this international blockbuster. All bets are off. Holy hell, yeah, it's going to have sequels. And that's exactly what they're doing. So the next one cracked me the hell up. This one was just funny as hell. I urge everybody to check out this video, even if you never have a desire to check it out. Now, it's called Mosh Pit Simulator. Now, I'm old enough to, and I know I've played the age card a few times, but it's always for a reason. I don't just throw it out there, right? Just to relay to you what moshing means to me, because in the early 80s, we called it slam dancing, and it was generally done at hardcore punk venues. Metal kind of adopted it as well later, right? And now they call it a mosh pit. Back then, we just, like I said, or moshing, we just called it slam dancing. And anyways, yeah, did a lot of that when I was young. Still go to concerts where that happens a lot. In fact, I made the mistake, just as a quick interlude, of buying Iron Maiden tickets on the floor, finding myself in a mosh pit, right? And instead of being in the third row, I ended up 40 back, never to get back to the front of the stage again. That kind of sucked. But I digress. Back to this. So this thing is called the Mosh Pit Simulator, and the people look literally like zombie vegetables, right? Apparently there were some kind of bugs that he found so charming he just kept them on, right? In the game, body parts falling off. So you're basically pushing people, crazy looking, crazed, deranged, vegetable, zombie, gray, humanoid things with awesome physics thrown in. So what I'm not sure of yet personally is the author admits it's bad on purpose, right? But for me, there's that awesome state for something that I call terabad. And terabad to me is that blessed union of having something when it's so terrible and so bad that it actually becomes a good thing. That is terabad. And is this terabad? I don't know. But I will find out because it got my attention, right? It just looks freaking hilarious. If it's $2, $3, $4, I'm going to pick it up just for that alone, just for the entertainment factor. Now, next one has to do with the kind of legal proceedings, legal story, however you want to call it, concerning John Carmack against his old employer, Zenimax. it always pisses me off to see stuff like that. Like, I get it from a business point of view, right? But hey, he was one of the guys that founded id, a company that you purchased, right? And I understand when you do a business purchase, you're purchasing assets. Not all the time, but most of the time you're purchasing assets. Some of those assets, yes, are in a person's brain, right? But if you look at the facts that have been raised, just preliminary, right? The employment contract that Carmack, and the article mentions this specifically, that he had signed ran out before he became CTO. Like, this thing, it wasn't that he was going against this at the time. Now, did it run out while he was still with Oculus, or had he already left, it was still in effect, and then it ran out in that period of time where he hadn't been made CTO? That I don't know, and I guess that'll come out. But come on, guys. Anyways, I love their response. It was a pretty hard-hitting response, the Oculus folks anyways. And my personal feeling on this is that, yeah, there's going to be no damages awarded in this case. I think it was above board from the evidence that I've seen, the facts that I've heard, but I'm sure there's going to be many more that come to light. I may change my mind yet, right? But still, you know, with VR being in its infancy, it will be interesting to see how this plays out, because it will probably set a legal precedent, you know, in other areas, right? Because we're going to see a lot of this, people jumping ship anytime there's a new technology, right? Last story I thought was just a little bit of a cool, kind of different take on virtual reality, right? Now, in the 80s, it's no surprise, there were a lot of what we called psychedelics around, right? And I'm not talking about condoning, not condoning, for, anti, not on this channel, from me anyways, right? But suffice it to say, they existed, right? And just as psychedelics like LSD, acid, right? Or peyote, or whatever, right? DMT, all that stuff. Whatever the psychedelic, there were media creations that cater to that. Sometimes indirectly, sometimes on purpose. I remember lots of Commodore and Amiga demos that were strictly, specifically for the psychedelic trip experience, quote unquote, right? So anyways, this project, it's a music video, and it is pretty much what I just described. It is a Trippatron. There are no two if and buts about it. It's a Trippatron, right? That's what it's designed for. It looks pretty cool, but pretty strange. Very colorful. And it has that 80s kind of vibe to it, that 80s music video vibe. So have a look, check it out. You know, definitely. It's probably not an area I'm going to touch on in the future, but it will be, well, let's say if it's in the news and it's interesting, I'll touch on it, right? Is the whole concept of psychedelics and virtual reality. Hell, it doesn't even have to be psychedelics. It could be psychology in general, right? We study the human brain. How much of that can we do using virtual reality? My bet would be a lot, so that would be cool. And then the ultimate last thing that I was going to talk about was an article in Upload VR that talked about, finally, after 25 years after the last VR crash, we may actually see the convergence of internet and virtual reality. And I mention that because I don't completely agree, right? Surprise, surprise. Yes, I'm for virtual reality. I've said that so many times. Most of you that are watching are for virtual reality, but turning everything into something because something exists isn't going to be the key to success, right? I will want virtual reality for specific internet experiences and applications, right? Not across the board, not as this universal plug-in necessarily, right? If it's good and it's functional, I'll probably use it. But to date, I haven't been wowed by virtual desktop. It's a novelty. It looks pretty cool. But I don't think I could spend, like, put it this way, I couldn't spend a work day on a virtual desktop in VR like I could sitting in front
of that same work laptop, right? Again, your results may vary. Fair enough. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And yeah, which peripherals would you want if money was no object? Just curious kind of what the consensus is for peripherals. As always, guys, cheers, and we will see you on the flip side.